Okie dokie. We are live.
Well, good evening to you. My name is Brad Franco, and welcome to the Charleston County Criminal Justice Coordinating Council's quarterly forum as we take a look at the front end of Charleston's criminal justice system. The Criminal Justice Coordinating Council is made up of some of the folks you see right here on your screen right now as we bring this to you. And trust me, we all wanted to be in person doing this tonight, but Zoom is the way we do it these days. And we're going to do our best to bring you the information that I think is going to be beneficial to a lot of you in just going through the warm up and the practice and the run throughs to get this on here tonight. I know I learned a lot in just the 1 hour going through this and what the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council is doing and some of the changes that are being made to the justice system as a result. I want to introduce some of the folks you see before you right now. I want to begin with the chairman of the CJCC. He's the deputy chief of the Mount Pleasant Police Department, Stan Gregg. The director of special operations for Charleston Dorchester Mental Health Center is Dennis Puebla. The CJCC vice chair, the Honorable Ellen Steinberg, who is a magistrate in Charleston County, and CJCC project director, Christy Danford, is also here. And I want to begin with Stan. And Chief Gregg, what exactly is the CJCC? Because to us, it's now a household name. For others, they're going to be learning about it here tonight.
Well, Brad, to answer your question, it is a collaboration, the likes of which haven't been realized in my 30 plus years in law enforcement. The Criminal Justice Coordinating Council was formed in 2015 as a collective of elected and senior officials, law enforcement, judicial and court leadership, behavioral health professionals, victim and legal advocates, and 12 community representatives, all who are committed to taking a hard look at our local criminal justice system. The mission of the CJCC is to assist in making sustainable, data-driven improvements to the Charleston County's criminal justice system and thereby improving public safety and community well-being. We focus on the system as a whole and utilize data and collaboration to focus on common challenges and forge agreed upon solutions to those challenges. To illustrate just a little bit about what the CJCC is, I'd like to introduce a video that we produced to give you some idea.
Where is it? 1 second, I apologize.
TV, we deal with this all the time. So this is nothing new. So this is what this is where I come in. We fill the dead air, so to speak, as we get this video going. And I know a lot of you out there just tuning in. So it's a good time to let more people join in. I want to welcome those who are watching on Facebook Live. Thank you for being here as you take part of your dinner hour to join us and learn more about the front end of the criminal justice system in Charleston County. And basically tonight, we're going to give you an overview of the front end of the criminal justice system and how it works in Charleston County. And that goes everywhere from the no contact with the justice system whatsoever. And we're going to take you up into bond court.
Over and over again, people rotate in and out of our criminal justice system, and a revolving door that exhausts the system harms communities and exacerbates racial inequities. The Charleston County Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, or the CJCC, has been working to improve safety and justice in our community since 2015. The CJCC, which focuses heavy on data, studied the local justice system and launched an initial strategic plan to help make the system more effective, efficient, and equitable. Implementation of the plan led to impressive results. And findings indicated its next strategic plan needed to do more to improve pretrial justice, racial equity, and recidivism. These are big community challenges that require community solutions. The Dialogue to Change project served to better inform and involve the community in developing the CJCC's next strategic plan.
Because the real solutions to real problems always come from the ground up. And the more the community knows is involved, the better the solution's going to be.
Dialogue to Change is founded upon the belief that people and institutions can use an equity lens, connect across differences, share honestly, consider diverse views, and work together to identify and offer actions towards change.
You have a lot of community members who just live a normal life, and they don't have that opportunity to cross the lines and be able to sit at a table with a city representative or, or law enforcement, unless it's in a negative state. I think it's just an amazing thing that they're doing, that we're doing, and being able to allow the community to come to the table and bring their ideas, bring their perspective, bring their opinion, because that matters more than anything.
More than 1,200 community members engaged in large events, roundtable dialogues, and/or surveys.
I was very naive about the justice system, and that through these different classes and events, I have learned so much. They asked us to be group facilitators. They gave us the training, they give us the materials, they give us the data, and they really make it an importance in our life that this is something going forward we can make a difference in our communities.
Brad, this is just a demonstration of one of the strategies the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council has moved forward to assist in changing our criminal justice system. As noted, the CJCC is a collaborative council guided by data, and our success hinges on working together, systems actors and community members. Like I said, never before in my 30+ years in law enforcement have we brought together such a diverse group of individuals working toward the common goal of improving our criminal justice system. Together, we have best opportunities for overcoming the long-standing, complex, and criminal justice challenges we face. But before we dive into our agenda, we'd like to take a moment to start a new tradition, and that tradition is to honor someone from our community doing extraordinary things and helping to improve our local criminal justice system and strengthening our community. Tonight, there's someone very special that we'd like to honor, and this man is somebody I'd like to call my friend. He embodies resilience, redemption, and community building. He's inspiring on so many levels, and so very much appreciate and support him. He's the founder and director of My Community's Keeper Mentor Group, host of monthly community public service announcement, lifting up community resources and sharing ways to get engaged, consistent attendance of over 500 people, active community volunteer and mentor, serves as the CJCC community representative representing the previously incarcerated population within Charleston County, serves as a juvenile arbitrator and victim impact panel speaker for the 9th Circuit Solicitor's Office. He is a native and current resident of North Charleston's Acabee community. He is a father to 4, including a son lost to gun violence at the age of 16. He served 19 years in the South Carolina Department of Corrections. He is a graduate of Trinidad Technical College. Join me in celebrating and supporting Mr. Keith Smalls. And we'd like to present him the first ever Community Justice Award. And Keith, you'll be getting a framed copy of this at one of our in-person CJCC meetings.
Thank you.
Keith, we'd like to hear a few words.
I'm honored, I'm privileged. I think initially becoming a member of the CJCC, I had no idea what I was stepping into. And likewise, I didn't think, we definitely didn't know who I was coming through the door as a representative of the previously incarcerated. But shortly thereafter, we recognized that this was a match made in heaven. I was impressed on so many levels, on the level of decency and amazing people that came together in this room in order to help bring change. For me, I've always said to Christy in the beginning, and to even you, Sir Greg, is that, it was about results, and there was so many great results, and I was just so happy to be at the table. I'm honored to be the first recipient of this award. This is something that is dear near to my heart. After serving 19 years in prison, losing a son to gun violence in the North Charleston community, and being a mentor, more importantly, I look forward to the future with CJCC and the things that they're going to do in the Charleston County and beyond, and being a model. I'm honored. I appreciate it. I am so appreciative of this recognition. And I'm humbled by it. I thank you all for all the support, for welcoming me, open-armed, on so many levels. I thank you all. I truly appreciate it.
Very well
Deserved,
deserved.
my friend.
Yeah.
Well deserved. Keith, I just want to say before we move on to the next part of this, so many people in your position would give up after lose a child, let alone the other things you went through. And you should be applauded. And I hope we get a chance to do that in person very soon. Let's talk about the front end of the justice system, because that's the focus of our forum here tonight. It's hard to move. It's hard to recover from that. Christy, tell us about what the CJCC is doing when we talk about the so-called front end of the justice system.
Sure, gladly. So one of the things, and Keith, I'm just so glad that we could be here with you tonight, and so grateful for all of your leadership. But when we think about the data, and I know everybody knows, if you know me, you know I'm a data wonk. One of the things that we did up front was really do a big assessment of the system and say, how are we using our jail? One of the things that we saw was a lot of the most frequent reasons for jail use were misdemeanor municipal magistrate charges, things like simple possession of marijuana, open container, trespassing, misdemeanor shoplifting, things where the result of the arrest didn't necessarily have to be jail use without resorting to incarceration. When that was the only charge that was going on, you know, the rethinking of jail use on that. So we've targeted those 5 charges in particular, and you can see pretty clearly on the slide how those numbers dipped pretty dramatically from 2014 to 2019, they fell by 73%. If we take just simple possession of marijuana, for example, that fell by 93%. So it was, you know, really a rethinking, is this really a reason to use our jail? The other thing we did, Adina, if you'll click the next slide, is to identify other options out there in the community so that law enforcement, you know, or hopefully before law enforcement's even involved, what are some other ways that folks who need help can get the help that they need in real time, whether that's homelessness or mental illness or substance use disorders. And Dennis, I'm sure we'll talk more in a bit, but when it comes to those collaborations, we saw the Tri-County Crisis Stabilization Center reopen in 2017. You can kind of see here over the years since they opened back up through 2019, at least pre-COVID, you know, those numbers increase in terms of referrals coming from the street or the medical community or law enforcement. And then the next slide, you know, kind of gives you a little bit more data on that law enforcement and clinician involvement. And this was data that they started tracking in 2018 and have since, you know, grown over time. And that's really having those important embedded clinicians available to assist victims and law enforcement in real time. So you can see the number of consultations grew between, you know, when it started through 2019, as well as having opportunities to bring somebody to get help at the clinic itself, as opposed to, resorting to traditional, you know, practices that may not really get to that underlying issue that we're dealing with. And one thing I'll just kind of point out with that is, Adina, if you click the next slide, what this has really done is it's changed jail use in Charleston County. If you look at that yellow line on this graph, it reflects the municipal and magistrate charges that we call summary charges that are coming into our jail. Summary charges were the most frequent reasons for coming to jail in 2014. And you can see, you know, by rethinking this and utilizing alternatives, we've seen that number drop by 67% between 2014 and 2019. And at the same time, that red dotted line, which is our, you know, circuit court, the Court of General Sessions, that's remained relatively steady. But for the first time in 2019, municipal and magistrate charges were no longer the #1 reason coming to our jail. And collectively, you know, we've seen a pretty big drop in our jail population, and a lot of that up to 2019 really has been attributed to, you know, this rethinking of jail use on the front end in particular.
That's a staggering number, and I know we brought it up when we were having the conversations before we came on the air here tonight. 67% that's a big number that jumps out at, and should jump out at people when they hear that. Stan, go back to the law enforcement now side of this, because you hear these numbers coming down. That that is a major change that has to be made by law enforcement, and there has to be a commitment, not just your agency. I mean, it has to be several agencies cooperating here to make that happen, right? You're muted. Stan, unmute yourself. I don't have the button.
Sorry, my fault. You're absolutely correct. It did take a big commitment, and the major users of the jail facilities are going to be Mount Pleasant, Charleston City, North Charleston, and Charleston County. And it was that commitment and rethinking the use of the jail that drove the four big agencies to make a committed approach and taking a more holistic look at how we're utilizing those resources and handling our calls for service. Traditionally, the easy way was to respond to a call for service, investigate it, make the arrest, take them, drop them off at the jail, be back in service in a short order of time, and just deal with that particular incident instead of taking a really hard look at the problem that exacerbated the incident to begin with. You know, we've started taking a look at what's really driving that problem, reducing community policing at its best, reducing the problem. That way we'll reduce those incidents. We also realized and recognized that those lower level offenses have underlying causes that are more societal and could be driven by substance use disorder, homelessness. And we really started, especially moving into our next strategic plan, we really started looking at what other services can we make available to the persons that are involved in these calls for service. I like to highlight the Mount Pleasant's habitual offender program as an example, and we've had that in place for a long time, where we really work with each individual, and especially those people that have repeated contact with law enforcement, to try to resolve those issues as best we can without the utilization of jail resources. One way and one commitment that the Big Four had made is utilizing courtesy summons in lieu of custodial arrest. And that is a big driver of that 67% drop in summary charges. Issuing courtesy summons for things like trespassing, disorderly conduct, shoplifting, some of those lower level offenses, simple possession of marijuana would be another one. Some of those lower level offenses that can be resolved with just a citation versus taking them to jail, because it's a better utilization of law enforcement resources, and it doesn't get the persons in the cycle of jail use where they sit in there, maybe not be able to bond out, maybe lose their job, which impacts their housing, which impacts their family. It's a very cyclical cycle of just for maybe a minor offense. Even though the summary level use of jail has dropped to 67%, there hasn't been a correlated increase in the level of crime. In actuality, this year's or 2019's crime results have shown a decrease in nonviolent crime. Violent crime has went up somewhat, but nonviolent crime has continued to go down. When people ask us, well, you're putting offenders back out on the road and you're not protecting the community. One of our commitments early on with CJCC was to ensure the jail resources were available for violent offenders who are a danger to the community, and not necessarily utilizing those resources for these lower level offenses.
And just so everybody understands, courtesy summons is, for lack of a better term, a ticket that has, you're coming to court for this offense.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. We talked about options and what else do you do? Courtesy summons, one of them, but as you mentioned, there are underlying issues that could come into play, and that's where I want to bring in Dennis Puebla with Charleston Dorchester Mental Health Center. Dennis, what are some of those other options that are available before law enforcement becomes involved?
Sure, thanks, Brad. So it starts with our two centers. We have one in Dorchester, one in Charleston, and another one in Berkeley, and they're available for anybody seeking any type of mental health treatment. And actually, our center is set up where you can just walk in. You don't even need an appointment. So anybody who is experiencing any type of mental health issues or happens to be in crisis can just walk into our center. And we have several different disciplines of treatment there. We service adults. They provide different types of clinical services. But really the hub of our program is our mobile crisis team. And that's the only one in the state that is available 24/7, 365 days a year, doing both mobile crisis assessments and intakes. And it's been around for 30 years. So, you know, and they've partnered with law enforcement for many years with different stakeholders. And basically when, you know, if law enforcement was to call, is at a scene with somebody who's in a mental health crisis, our mobile team will respond. They can do that both in person, or they can do it via video, which they've been doing for the last a little over 2 years now. And they've been doing that in a partnership with EMS, where they're able to sort of assess and provide some guidance for law enforcement as an alternative or a diversion from needing to arrest that individual or even give them a ticket, and really linking them, if appropriate, to the most appropriate level of care for them. Our vocal clinicians, and these are clinicians that are embedded at all of our law enforcement departments and sheriff offices in Somerville and Charleston, North Charleston, as Stan mentioned, the Big Four. And primarily they're there for to treat and help out with victims of crime. But you know, being in the department there, they are available to partner with law enforcement. So if law enforcement comes in front of an individual community who is experiencing a mental health crisis, those clinicians will help facilitate a connection to mobile crisis. And again, we'll look to get in there and provide a diversion to an arrest and subsequent incarceration. We've also established a couple of call centers, and I just want to go in those and I'll kind of tie it into our crisis stabilization center, which Chrissy had mentioned earlier. So we just took over a statewide call center, and I'll provide some of the contact information for that. And this is a call center that's open now 24/7, again, 365 days a week, that is statewide now. And any individual at any given time can call in. They'll get a live clinician, and they'll be able to talk, and we'll be able to provide some type of assessment, or if need be, have our mobile crisis team respond statewide. And then I just want to kind of just touch base on our Tri-County Stabilization Center, TCSC. This is it's a collaborative between Charleston Dorchester Mental Health, the Sheriff Department, CJCC, the hospitals, both Roper and MUSC. It's a 10-bed voluntary short-term facility for adults with a primary focus on stabilizing psychiatric symptoms. The target population is a group of individuals that don't necessarily need outpatient care. Their needs sort of rise above that, but they also don't need to be in a hospital setting or an inpatient setting. So this program, over the 2 years that it has been open prior to closing again with the pandemic, was vital. It was a place where they take police drop-offs in addition to our centers, who also take police drop-offs, diversions. But it was a place where an individual can come and stay up to 14 days, even though the length of stay was much shorter. But it was a place where they could go and have their mental health needs met, and then prepare them from discharge to either be linked back to our health center or other programs within the community based on what their needs are. Prior to closing in March, our census had actually spiked, and in collaboration with law enforcement, in collaboration with the hospitals, we were able to not only address the crisis, but really start to plan in terms of how they were going to be discharged back to the community. Because one of the things that we've noticed over a period of time now is, we get readmissions by the same individuals, or what they describe as familiar faces, right? And they're familiar faces that are familiar to law enforcement, to our health centers, our providers in our community. And, you know, we found that by kind of wrapping them with familiar faces who know them, we're able to sort of not only divert a lot of their behavior that brings them repeatedly in front of law enforcement, but also diverts them from overutilizing our ERs and places like crisis stabilization. And we can really kind of focus on what their pressing needs are. Even though they may not see it, they may not be ready to sort of accept that right now, but we kind of are able to work with them. And we're seeing some early success prior to closing with really kind of planning for their discharge. So that's kind of on the front end of things. Sort of on the back end of things, what I like to call reentry.
And I think Dennis froze, but that's okay. Dennis, that's great information. And as soon as we reestablish the connection, we'll be able to get back to him momentarily. But I want to move on because we've just talked about a lot of the diversions and keeping people away from the jail. But there still are times that jail is necessary. Ellen Steinberg, as I mentioned, is magistrate in Charleston County. Ellen, obviously there are times where jail is going to be necessary. So what happens then? What are the strategies that you've been working on as far as bond court is concerned?
Brad, thank you. Before I go into strategies, I'd really like to just kind of go over what bond court is. Charleston County, we have a centralized bond court. And by law in South Carolina, a judge must set bond for defendants within 24 hours of arrest. That means if you're arrested at 3 o'clock in the morning, you are going to have a bond hearing within 24 hours. There are certain offenses that bond will be set by a circuit court judge, and that will be done within 30 days. We talk about serious offenses. We're talking about murder, CSC with a minor, certain crimes that are identified. Every person who's arrested and brought in front of a bond judge has the right to an individualized decision made by a judge about the terms of their release. So pretrial detention is only supposed to be used when there's no other reasonable safeguards, that you cannot assure the court that that person will appear for their court hearing, or protect the community from harm. These are taken very seriously. South Carolina strictly limits the cases in which bond can be denied. If you're interested, go to the South Carolina Code annotated. It's published here, 171510. When somebody appears in front of a bond court judge, they're advised of their rights. There also explains the process, and the process is a bond court judge cannot dismiss or modify the charges. Bond court judge is only there to set the bond, to determine, can this person be released on their own personal recognizance, which we call a PR, or do we need to put some sort of conditions or safeguards in order to assure that, again, they will appear for trial and they're not going to be a threat to the community or for further criminal activity. Historically, in South Carolina, a bond court judge only had the defendant in front of them and a copy of their criminal history. Occasionally, you would have a victim in the courtroom. Occasionally, you would have an arresting officer. Today, we have a prosecutor, we have a public defender or a defense attorney, we have victim advocates, we have local law enforcement, and we have a pretrial service report. All of these parties contribute to making that bond hearing more fair and more just, and we follow the law. The law is very explicit. It tells a bond court judge what they shall consider and what they may consider in reaching this decision. And we have a defense attorney and a prosecutor really basically arguing their sides, what they think should happen. Again, this provides the bond court judge with so much information so that we can make a ruling. One of the things that we're doing that we're really proud of in Charleston is we have what we call a PSR, which is a pretrial service report. Pretrial service report provides us with a consistent, objective, and reliable way to assess for risk. Again, the risk, the question is there going to be rearrest, a threat to the community, or will that person fail to appear for their court hearing? The PSR, pretrial service report, provides information, basic information such as their extended criminal history, probation and parole, solicitor's office, court index, jail. They put together 2 pages of information. A judge has this information, the judge has the people who appear in front, and we take that and then we can make a fair and just decision. I want to be very clear. The PSR is not the sole decision factor for a bond court judge. It is part of the process. Every person who appears in front of a bond court judge is looked at as an individual and is weighed separately.
I lost my own mute button. Thank you, Ellen. That's great information, because we talk a lot about bond court. Like, I use the phrase bond court in my job a lot. And I don't think people understand how much goes into that and how important that is really at the beginning of someone's interaction in the justice system. Let's go back to Christy. What is the data? I mean, that's part of the mission statement, is the data. So what does the data say about our justice system?
So when it comes to bond court, we've been tracking a couple of things with the strategies that we employed, right? One was, they're having public defenders available to provide representation to people, and having law enforcement or the prosecutor, victim advocates, really having that to be more of a real hearing. So one of the things that we've been tracking since we started was, going from basically 0 public defender representations in centralized bond court to putting public defenders there. And you can kind of see that red dotted line on this graph, shows the increase. So then the yellow line across the top, the solid line, is how many bond court hearings we had in centralized bond court over the years. So by 2019, you had public defenders available to represent almost a quarter of the clients going through. So these are folks who can't afford an attorney, don't have a private attorney, and they need that representation in that moment. So that's just one area where we're tracking it. But to think about going from 0 to having, almost 2,000 in a year is a pretty big jump. And then the other thing that we've been doing is tracking. We know a lot, and our reports have a lot of this information about, release rates over the years have remained relatively steady. We know most people that are going to get out, and they normally get out within the first day or so, if not the first week. We also, are able to look at differences between personal recognizance bonds and financial bonds. And really we get to do outcome studies. So if you click the next slide, you'll see, this is just one of the studies that we've done where we looked at people who were assessed and released pre-trial during 2018 and 2019. And the pie chart on the left, you'll see, most people, and this is consistent with our previous studies as well as national studies, most people that are released pre-trial do just fine, right? But that 29%, that darker, piece of the pie chart there, those are the folks that don't, so we were able to look at it and study and see, well, what happens? Why are they not making it to court, or what is the reason? And what we see is most of those violations are new arrests. So the folks that are getting new arrests in the pretrial period, a lot of them are getting arrested within the first 6 months, and several of them more than once. So this is a really big area of concern for us, and something that I know we're looking forward to trying to tackle as we move forward, because this is an important matter, and it really affects safety. It affects the justice system and how timely we do things and how well we do them. So this is certainly an area to forge more solutions going forward. And if you click the next slide, the other thing we've done is we've tried to say, well, what can we learn about the situation? So when Dennis was talking before about familiar faces, we just studied in 2019 our most active familiar faces. So this graph, this image really portrays the folks that were most repeatedly churning in and out of our local jail. And you can see 18 individuals, 18 people in 2019 were booked 167 times on 222 charges, consuming almost 1,700 jail bed days. And this is another area where you need to looking to forge better solutions with trying to figure out what's really going on here. There's a difference between somebody who's a serious public safety, threat, who needs the full force of the criminal justice system to respond, and folks who really have some underlying issues that are going to be more of a public health response. So that's just another area where we're looking to dig deeper. And if folks are interested, please, I encourage you to go to our website and read our reports. A lot of this detail is there for everyone's consumption.
I mean, that slide right there is attention getting. I will say that. So Stan, what are some of the things that the CJCC is going to be doing here moving forward? Because in just a short amount of time, you've seen what this group has done and the changes it's made, because it seems like there's a lot of momentum moving forward.
Well, as I alluded early on, we are into our next strategic plan that we just recently published, building off of the successes and work that we've had on our previous plan and continuing some of those initiatives that we weren't able to get accomplished. In all, we have 12 initiatives that we're working on over the next 3 years, part of our recently released strategic plan. The strategic initiatives serve to engage the community in improving the local criminal justice system and addressing the inequities that are quite obvious in our system. Strengthen those diversions that Dennis talked about, and the deflections from the criminal justice system through utilization of some of the programs that he introduced. And focus on fairness and reentry. One of the things that we haven't done initially was on really looking at reentry. We looked at the initial stages, but we didn't look at what's going to happen to those people once they get out. And achieve advancements in case processing. That is one of the successes that we have really recognized during COVID, and that's something for future conversations. But the way we've been able to move some of those cases in June and July for the first time in years, the number of cases coming out of General Sessions Court actually exceeded the number of cases going into General Sessions Court. The plan, our strategic plan, to tell you a little bit about it, was built on the results of our dialogue to change effort, which the slide is illustrating and the video introduced, where we engaged over 1,200 people in setting the plan's course. We had 4 large events with 29 speakers, 460 participants. I can continue to read, 11 roundtable dialogues, 22 volunteer facilitators. As you saw in the video, the facilitators got as much out of it as the participants. Scribes and 101 participants. Community survey, which at the end of our session today, there will also be a survey. 654 respondents. And we culminated that with an action forum where I had 100 participants. And you saw highlights of that on the video as well, where we had a big group, whiteboards, really working and getting down to the nitty gritty. And then we incorporated their input into our strategic plan work groups moving forward. We continue to sharpen our focus based on data trends and impacts of COVID-19 moving forward, because we really had to adjust some of the things that we were doing, and we were gathering data all around the country on our safety justice challenges, specifically because of the challenges COVID-19 has presented us, especially when it comes to case processing, because of the limitations of jail or prison as an option for those cases that could possibly be moved quicker through our system. Prison is not accepting those people that might be sentenced. Our next quarterly forum is, you will learn more about other parts of our local system and these initiatives. But as we're wrapping up today, I know that we had a few hands up earlier. We wanted to open it up for question and answer session, really focusing those questions on what we discussed today, and providing some information and answers to the questions that people may have, or questions that will lead us into our next community forum.
Dan, I'm going to start the questions. And I want to ask you, because being able to get the big 4, as you refer to them, Charleston County Sheriff's Office, Charleston Police Department, Mount Pleasant Police Department, North Charleston Police Department, to all come on board and be part of this. What did that take? What type of coordination and cooperation did that take, or was that a no-brainer for everybody?
I think it was a no-brainer, because even though I say that, I think it's a daily commitment from all of the 4 agencies to really recognize and understand that we have to police differently. We were quick to use jail for the resolution to any incident that we went to. And that goes back to my previous point of traditional police response to an incident. You go, you lock somebody up, you're not solving anything. You're actually perpetuating some of those calls for service by not really addressing the problem. Domestic violence is one that, even though when you talk about familiar faces, that person is always going to be put in jail, but we try to get the victim of domestic violence out of that cycle. And that is no different than any other calls for service. We need to be approaching, and we have approached those calls for service differently. You draw on the big four, but I want to reiterate, this was a collaboration from the community in the criminal justice system, as well as the community at large. And a representation that was presented on that one of the introductory slides. This is the first time that you've brought together the prosecutor, the defense, the ACLU, members of our community, our mental health professionals, to really look at our utilization of the system and looking for better ways to solve the crisis that we have in our community.
Ellen, from your standpoint, you talk, those are drastic changes to bond court. I can remember early in my career going into to cover a bond court hearing and it basically being empty, other than the person who's charged, the judge, and police officer or someone presenting the case and what happened. From your standpoint, how has it changed? And for someone who's going in, and observing bond court, how big of a difference is that in the impact on the person who's been charged?
Thank you for asking that question. The impact is enormous. I cannot begin to express to everybody listening to this what this impact has been, because as you said, historically, a bond hearing was the bond court judge, the defendant, occasionally a victim, occasionally law enforcement. And now we have representation. Every person who's booked into Charleston County Detention Center, if they qualify, they have the opportunity to be represented by a public defender. Public defenders in Charleston County are full-time criminal defense attorneys who are with them, preparing them for the bond hearing. We have the solicitor's office who has made an assistant solicitor available to represent the state. We have law enforcement there. We have a victim advocate. We have our pretrial service report. And for the first time, and I think this is only happening in Charleston, bond hearing judges have an opportunity to really make an informed decision. Now, we're still, let me take a step back. We don't have too many options. When we're talking about what a bond court judge can do, we can do a personal recognizance PR bond, which is no money, or a surety, which is going to be a money bond. With a surety, we can place certain conditions on the bond, such as no contact with the victim, can't go back to the place where the crime took place, you can't leave the state or the county or the city or your house. Those are the only options we have. So we have made tremendous strides, and we're looking to see what we can do next.
Ellen, thank you. David Trueluck asking a question. I think this will go to Stan. If someone is a repeat offender, say they're arrested for shoplifting 4 times in a 6-month period, he wants to know, is there anything in place to address that? Are they continuously given a courtesy summons? This is something you touched on briefly with the frequent flyers, if you will, Stan.
Just because they're a low-level offense doesn't automatically say that an officer is going to issue a courtesy summons for a shoplifting, let's say. There might be extenuating circumstances if they are a repeat offender, which we have quite a few of. They might not necessarily get a courtesy summons. They might be taken to jail. And one of the things that we're working on, especially across jurisdictions, is they shoplift today in Mount Pleasant, they shoplift tomorrow in North Charleston, they shoplift the next day in Charleston City, and that interagency communication to ensure that we are addressing some of those repeat offenders in a different manner. We try to get those from a Mount Pleasant standpoint. We try to get those cases in front of the judge quicker. One, because, and we issue those courtesy summons at the discretion of the victim as well, because the stores are a victim, and if they are adamantly opposed to issuing a courtesy summons, then we will make a custodial arrest. But we try to get those cases in front of our municipal judges in a more expeditious manner so that they can take care of the sentences, whatever that sentence may be. And we are looking at the underlying causes for those cases. And in a lot of those instances, we find substance use disorders are a big player in that. And we have our First Step program at Mount Pleasant, where we work really hard with those offenders, trying to get them to see other avenues and provide them resources necessary to try to stem that criminal side of their behavior.
Let's see if we can take one of the hands raised. Adina, if you can unmute Blanche. Blanche Nake, you have a question? I don't think I can't hear Blanche. Let's move on. Let's see if Ann Walker. Ann has a question.
Yes, this is Ann Walker. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I'm executive director of the Alston Wilkes Society, and we've been in business in South Carolina since 1962. We contract with the Federal Bureau of Prisons for people that are coming out of federal prison, and we have a reentry center in Charleston. We've also historically through the years had somebody in the area working with folks, helping them get jobs, helping deal with a variety of things as it relates to, folks that are offenders, former offenders, their families, etc. How can an agency like ours, and Mitch Lucas, who is, I think, the #2 guy with Al Cannon, is on our board, how can we as an agency be of more help in the Charleston area?
Good question. Who wants to take that?
Christy?
Hi, Ann. It's great to hear your voice. I think maybe we just can talk offline. And also, please feel free, if you've got somebody local in the area, to try to get them to come to our CJCC meetings. They're once a month, and they're open to the public. We've been meeting virtually since COVID. We're probably going to stick that way for a while. But we've got a couple of initiatives going around that might be of particular interest to you guys and the great work that you do. So thank you, Ann.
We're going to keep it with our numbers guru right there, because you brought up COVID, Christy, and we saw the numbers have dipped in the number of people being brought into the jail. Well, a naysayer is going to look at that saying, well, it's COVID-19, people aren't out, crime is down. It stands to reason.
Yeah, it's a really good point. We've been doing a very close tracking and study. We're going to keep digging into this. So we're looking at crime rates, reported crime, UCR, crime arrests, a uniform crime report arrest, as well as jail use. And we're not seeing spikes in crime with jail use going down. I mean, when we think about our jail, right, it's 97% or more of the local jail population are pending trial. They're not yet convicted of a crime. They're waiting for their day in court. So what we've learned with COVID, we saw our jail population reduce pre-COVID, really a lot of that due to, not bringing people to jail as often for municipal and magistrate charges. So we saw that, dip about 20%. And then since COVID, if we think about, where we were in the beginning of 2020 through July, for instance, the jail population fell another 32%. And with that, what we're seeing is our jail population, the composition of the jail is increasingly, what's left is a pretty, there's not that many compared to where we were. But by July, we were down locally to about 509, and that composition was more serious charges, more serious crime. So it's a combination of not having as many bookings for lower level stuff, but really using jail more for its intended purpose. And the folks that the judge was talking about earlier, if we don't have a reasonable safeguard in place for safety and or appearance, that's why we have jail.
We got another hand raised. Is that Patera McCarroll?
Yes, you actually pronounced my name correctly. Thank you.
Awesome. Every once in a while, I get it right.
Yeah. I didn't really get to hear Ms. Danford's response to, I think, Ann's question, or I don't even know if my question relates. However, I wanted to know what initiatives the CJCC is taking to address the contracts with agencies when it relates to for-profit prisons. That is a huge factor in the revolving door that has a lot of our community members going in and out of jail as well. I just wanted to hear somebody touch on that. If you guys have any initiatives currently to speak on that, that would be great to hear.
Who wants to take that?
I will pop into that. So Charleston County's jail is a public jail. It is a government resource jail. It is not a for-profit institution. And our state prison systems, I'm not aware of a single one that is for-profit in the state of South Carolina. I know they exist in other states, but that's not typically common in our state.
Okay, we got another hand. Timothy Terry. Timothy, you there?
Brad.
Timothy, can you hear me? There we go.
You there?
Go ahead.
Yes. Thank you so much. This is an awesome movement going on right now. Christy, so good to see you again. Keith, I just want to give a quick shout out to you. Man,
Timothy, if you can mute your computer while you talk, it'll get rid of that echo.
Okay, hang on, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's all right. I got to go back to my radio days to remember how that all works. You still there with us, Timothy?
I am.
All right, much better. Go ahead.
Is that better? Yeah,
Much
just
better.
a quick shout out to Keith and his accomplishments, pressing on through. My brother, 19 years,
doubt.
you've overcome. You're pressing through the challenges. But Fresh Start Visions is also a local nonprofit trying to do the same thing, overcome the revolving door, as we call it. But I had one question for Christy. Christy, we had a rep from Al Cannon's office trying to meet with our program director, Amy Haley, on this, the revolving doors, you would say, on local resources. What's the update on local people who are trying to help Charleston County and North Charleston with those getting out with jobs, housing, and local mentoring?
Tim, it's great to hear your voice. I would say one of the things, and I'm not sure who it was that reached out to you. I'm guessing it might have been Miss Pam. She's the reentry case manager at the jail. I think one of the things that we struggle with, right, and this is a statewide issue, and I know you know this very well, is that you've got folks that, most people in the state are going to go to local jails and they're not going to go to the Department of Corrections. And then there are those that are going to the Department of Corrections. And systemically, we think about the numbers returning to our community, either from a local jail or from the state prison system. There's a big gap between the amount of available services and the folks that are coming back that need them. So not only the quantity, but also, having a systemic understanding and approach to, how do we really truly impact recidivism in a meaningful, lasting way. Keith and Tim, you guys are both modeling the way for lots of other folks. But I wish I had a good answer for you. I think that's another area where we need to forge better solutions going forward. But Tim, and as well as Ann and the other woman that was on earlier, get in touch. We can talk more. We did a sequential intercept map about a year or so ago, and it starts to look at the different services available in the community, but also points out the gaps. And we know, some of our biggest gaps are those options between a bond hearing and when somebody gets to court, as well as, post disposition, what's happening around reentry. Those are areas that we certainly have lots of room for improvement.
Can I also add thanks again, Tim. I truly appreciate it, man. I appreciate all the work you guys are doing. My Communities Keep Them at the Group is the nonprofit that I founded with the same premises. We want to be able to have reentry programs, housing, mentoring for men coming from prison like myself. So in the new year, after we get the kind of figuring out COVID-19, there's an expectations that we will have programs. But it's going to be a battle that we have to fight together. As much as help that we get, it seems like as much help as we need. So, just be vigilant, man, and know that, we are here together and we're fighting, and, we're going to figure out a way to kind of help a little bit more than what we already are doing. So I appreciate you, man. I appreciate the thanks, man. And I'm here for you as much as I can.
I want to bring Dennis back in. Dennis, good to see you back. Mental health is just, it's such a primary cause in so many cases, and why people end up in contact with the justice system. The center is there. The resources in many cases are there. You can always use more resources, obviously. But what needs to be done as far as getting the word out to make sure that people understand that those resources are there, and making sure that they know where they can go to get that help if someone feels like they need that help. How can they get that word out so that they know you're there?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, we have a lot of, like, 211 is a great resource for anybody in the community seeking mental health treatment. We have several outreach workers, outreach programs. Both Tim and Keith were talking about the reentry piece of it, and the center is available. We have, I think it's just about when I froze. We do have a jail team of clinicians that are there to sort of engage with men and women that are about to reenter. TCSC, which is housed over at the Charleston Center, is a program prior to closing that we were linking with as sort of, when men and women come out of jail, they may need further stabilization. They may need sort of a bridge to get to what they need to connect in the community. And so we were really making some headway there. Connected to that program, we have vocational services. We're partnering with the city now around a housing initiative for those men and women that are experiencing homelessness. But getting the word out there, we're trying to find different avenues, different ways. This is obviously a great forum to get the word out there. Our centers are open. People can call and get whatever information they need. We have, and I'll wrap up with this, we're exploring again, getting advertisement out there, our billboards. We used to do a lot of that, ads on air. So any way we can get the message out there.
Stan, is there a way, if someone dials 911, say there's something happening, is there a way that dispatchers can send mental health teams instead of police if it's identified as something that can help?
One thing that has recently been added to consolidated dispatch was an embedded mental health clinician that works directly with dentists. So if they think it is strictly a mental health call, the law enforcement response will continue, emergency medical response will continue up until the point that the embedded mental health clinician makes a determination that we are no longer needed. If they make a determination we are no longer needed, they will remove us from the call for service. The mental health clinician will keep dealing with that and get the necessary resources to that person that may be in crisis at that moment.
I see Ann has her hand up one more time. Ann, we're almost out of time, but we'll check in with you. What's your question?
Can you hear me?
There we go. Yep.
Yeah, okay. Just not a question, but a comment. There's a tremendous amount of money that's been made available to help veterans who throughout the state. And unfortunately, a lot of, or a good number of veterans also have some kind of interaction with the criminal justice system. And so just to let everybody know, if there's housing that's needed for those folks, like we cover most of the state with this kind of program that's going on, and we don't have a person in Charleston handling this program, but we do have folks in the area, and of course also 180 Place also has those contracts. So just letting folks know that if somebody is a veteran and also involved in the criminal justice system and housing is needed, there are programs that can pay for up to 90 days of housing.
Awesome. Good information, Ann. Thank you for that. Christy, you want to let us know when the next event is and how people can get involved?
Sure. So we're hoping to do these the first Tuesday of every quarter. So our next one will be on Tuesday, January 5th. Hopefully 2020 will be a far better year than 2021 will be better than 2020. And in the meantime, you know, our meetings are open to the public. They're every month. You can engage with CJCC on social media or sign up for our newsletter. All that's available through our website, and really just encourage folks to, you know, that are interested in helping improve the justice system to, you know, hang out, learn more about CJCC, come to our meetings, read our stuff. And in the meantime, really get out there and collaborate and volunteer in places like Tim's Place or Ann's Place or Keith's. I think the more people do, the better off we'll all be.
All right, well, that's just about going to wrap things up for us here tonight. Thank you all for joining us and for being participants in this. I thought there were some great questions out there. I want to say congratulations again, and thank you to Keith Smalls. I thought his story is tremendous. If you have a chance to read anything about it, pretty impressive guy. Thank you to the chairman, Stan Gregg, Deputy Chief of the Mount Pleasant Police Department, our Director of Special Operations at the Charleston Dorchester Mental Health Center, Dennis Puebla, the Vice Chair and the Honorable Ellen Steinberg, Magistrate in Charleston County, and the Project Director, Christy Danford. Make it a great night, and I'll see you all in the morning, dark and early at 4:30.
Thank you all for attending.
Thanks all.
Thanks all. Good night.